For my birthday back in June, my best friend gave me this book. And for my birthday back in June, my husband gave me this yarn. If there exists such a thing as coincidence, then I will tell you right now that in this book is a pattern that asks this exact amount of this exact thickness of yarn. And said pattern is absolutely whimsical. So this is John Arbon Textiles Yarnadelic Sport in the color Waltz. It is 100% Falklands Corriedale. I made the tiniest of swatches for my Elizabeth I pullover. Width-wise, this seems to be spot on. And then length-wise, it is curling and is making me difficult. Yeah, that also seems to be 5 centimeters. Not including my cast on and bind off. Now why do I say 5 centimeters instead of the much more common 10 centimeters? Well, I was just being very efficient. If 40 rows count for 10 centimeters for my gauge swatch, then 20 rows should be 5 centimeters. And if I am consistent in my gauge, then 20 rows plus 20 rows is 5 plus 5 centimeters is 10. And I only need to knit half the swatch, half the time. And I can now start knitting for real, which is of course what we want, what we're all excited about. And surely half-assing my gauge swatches has never bitten me in the butt before, ever, right? Now that we are in daylight, I really must show you this yarn up close. I think that's just the beauty of John Arbon Textiles. Just all the colors that are in here. Like from afar, it looks just purple, but it is not. Do you see all those variations in color? Like last year I had a braid of John Arbon Textiles, Pollen Gold, and it just did that same thing. All these different kinds of yellow and green all together, and it made actually gold, pollen gold, so beautiful. And this purple is no different. This waltz really... something flew on me. This waltz really is a waltz of so many different colors all dancing together. Now what better place to continue knitting than in an actual cast. So when my best friend bought me this book, Tudor Roses, she of course knew exactly what she was doing, as we are both history nerds and love crafting. I mean, perfect amalgamation of our interests. However, she also gave me the chance to be a little bit annoying and pedantic, which is another hobby of mine. If you hear something akin to a wasp, that's my friend's drone. At the back of the book it says, through garment design, Starmore and her daughter Jade tell the stories of 14 women connected with the Tudor dynasty. They weave a narrative around the known facts of the subject's life using photography, art, and the only medium through which the Tudor women could leave a lasting physical record in their world, needlework. I studied history and my field of research was the High Middle Ages. One of my main pet peeves is the idea that women had no agency. And you are talking about literal queens, royalty. And you're saying that the only medium through which they had a lasting physical record is needlework? The Tudor queens? Let me be pedantic. Of course, my area of research was not Tudor era England. No, it was the High Middle Ages, more specifically the Prince Bishopric of Liège, which was part of the Holy Roman Empire by then. And we are in Germany right now, which not too far from Liège, and we are standing right now, my dear friends, my lords, ladies, gentledames, in Frauenburg. I don't know if you know German, but that's just the ladies' castle. This castle was not built by a queen even. It's called the ladies' castle. And this was built by the Countess Loretta of Sponheim. A countess has this as a physical record for her existence. Not just needlework. Thank you for indulging me in being a little bit pedantic about something. But for the rest, absolutely amazing book, and I love knitting. The pattern that I'm actually currently knitting. My little pedantic moment just now also makes me wonder a little bit how much of that idea that women had no agency in history, especially not in the Middle Ages, actually is a 19th and early 20th century ideal that is put on our history. When Alice Starmore gives needlework as like the only example of physical record of Tudor queens, it's actually a really interesting example because needlework is, for some cases in history, the only evidence that we have for it. There's such interesting, rebellious even embroidery of texts that carry such deep meaning and, well, yes, as I said, rebellion in them. And that was often the only way for women to address their situation and stuff. But I think they were a little bit later than Tudor times as well. So when I wondered if that concept of women not having any agency throughout history might have been a Victorian ideal, I think that might have been my historian spidey senses tingling. You get them for free whenever you graduate history. A day later, so a day after my trip to the castles, I went to the library, an equally as important place, of course. And I got myself this book to read, Worn, A People's History of Clothing, by Sofi Tanhauser. And on page 9 of the first chapter, I tell you, page 9 and 10, because it's a rather large part, I'm going to read you some excerpts. Guilds had long worked to keep their homemade products from getting on the market. In their death throes, they hit upon a new and potent weapon: gender. Although women in medieval Europe wove at home for domestic consumption, Many had also been guild artisans. Women were freely admitted as masters into the earliest medieval guilds, and statutes from Silesia and Oberlausitz showed that women were master weavers. The wholesale ejection of women from the market during this period was achieved not only through guild statute, but through legal, literary and cultural means. Throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, women lost the legal right to conduct economic activity as femmes seules. In France, they were declared legal imbeciles, and lost the right to make contracts or represent themselves in court. Meanwhile, Protestant reformers and Counter-Reformation Catholics established doctrinally that women were inherently inferior to men. This period, called the European Age of Reason, successfully banished women from the market and transformed them into the sweet and passive beings that emerged in Victorian literature. I've got some good news and some bad news. Let's start with the good news. I have finished both front side of the sweater and the back side. I've also started working on the sleeves. The bad news, however, is that I am woefully underprepared for this trip and the knitting on this trip because I only brought one extra skein of yarn and it is still in this format. I don't know why I have forgotten to cake my yarn and to bring all my yarn before going on this adventure. But we will have to find a way to make this work because I can't continue like this. I'm out of yarn. So my primitive solution is to, tension my skein onto chairs and then use this, which is my travel skein minder, which is a gift from another friend of mine, also for my birthday, as a nostopin. Yeah, let's try that. Is this going to take absolutely forever? Probably, but that's okay because my husband and his father are watching the Belgium versus Liechtenstein game right now. I'm not interested in that. So maybe I'll, when I turn off the camera in a moment, put on a little bit of music and just wind away. Here we go! 333 meters of yarn wound into a ball in, the traditional, almost historic way, which is kind of fitting because we're doing an historic inspired knit. Is this the best hand-wound ball ever? No, but it is my hand-wound ball and I'm kind of irrationally proud of it. Now, I am realistic. This is probably not enough yarn to finish both sleeves, which is kind of a pity because we are in the beautiful Morbihan region and how cool would it be to shoot like the reveal shots of this sweater, like autour de grand menhir. so many, so cool historical places just dotted around this place. And well, I will have to find a cool historical place in Belgium, I guess. Or maybe it is enough. We'll see. Let's get back to the knitting. I have finished our first sleeve, and honestly, I kind of expected to have a little bit more of a dramatic bell sleeve, but we'll see whenever we block and put this together. Now I have also finished another thing. I have finished reading Worn, you know, the book that I referenced in the beginning of this video about women not having agency being a Victorian train of thought. Now, I finished it and I kind of wanted to say something about it because it has left me feeling a little bit as I am, if I would say it in Dutch, staying on my hunger. This book is divided into a couple different chapters which all talk about a singular fabric: cotton, silk, rayon, and other synthetic fibers. It ends with a chapter about wool. And during the chapters on cotton, on silk, on all the synthetics, I thought, yeah, this is a really poignant book, really pointing towards the problems that we have in fast fashion, giving historic overviews of how people used to use the fiber. And then it came to wool. And then I got the ick about this book. Firstly, but that's like minor. Super minor. Sofi Tanhauser, the writer, gets 2 sheep breeds wrong. You know, this is nitpicking, and this is specifically because I am me, but she wrote zwart bies instead of zwart bles. And you know, I just love zwart bles, and how dare she. But then she also wrote that textile is a Norwegian sheep breed. And I was like, but don't you mean Texel is a Dutch sheep breed? Unless I'm completely mistaken, and there is a Norwegian sheep breed named Texel, I was like, but did she actually research this bit good enough? And then the main reason why I got the ick about the wool chapter is her anecdotal description of Woolfest 2019, which she describes as only visited by old women. And I kind of think that there are even a couple of you watching this right now who were at Woolfest in 2019 and who do not subscribe to the description old woman. The description of Woolfest being visited only by old women is especially jarring because she also wrote a paragraph about, you know, art versus craft and women's work being devalued, but then she also did fall into the pitfall of the stereotype that, you know, knitting and spinning and crochet is an old lady's hobby. You know what? Christine has a really good reaction video to SciShow's video on knitting that explains why this is kind of problematic better than I can. So I will just link it down in the description. Christine is a lot more eloquent on these topics than I am. You will find it there. Secondly, in that same chapter, she described a shearer of sheep. I don't know if I can find it, but that description just felt unnecessary. He looked like you could find him smoking menthols outside a gas station. Just why? Paul was shearing a sheep. I've got a feeling that the conclusion of this book is, you know, all other fibers bad, but wool and handcrafts good, and this is the future. And while, you know, I don't necessarily disagree with that, I don't think it paints a really good picture of how we can go forward in our fiber community. I don't know, maybe you should read it for yourself, but that was My feeling after finishing Worn, the wool chapter gave me a little bit of an ick. Like, if there are so many mistakes and it is so anecdotal on wool, like the chapter I am most knowledgeable about, then what about the chapters I didn't know much about? I don't know if you even like me giving book reviews, but my review on Worn by Sofi Tanhauser is a little bit mixed. Like, if you need something to tell you a little bit more about what the problems are with fast fashion today and with all synthetics, with dyeing processes and stuff, good book. But the ending is lacking, like the conclusion is lacking, and the chapter on wool gave me the ick. I have finished all 4 of the pieces, whoopsie, of my Queen Elizabeth sweater. Now, whoops. As you can see, they're actually kind of a little bit of silly tubes. So before I start assembling this piece and knit the collar, I'm going to give them a light press, you know, a little bit of a steam blocking under a damp towel, just to make them more manageable than these little danger noodles. Now, just as an illustration of why I am pressing my pieces, like, there are people out there that don't block stuff. I used to be one of those, but let me show you why it is actually a lifesaver. This is one of the fronts or the backs, you know, they're identical before I put the iron to it. It doesn't even look like it's going to fit me. And this is the freshly pressed one. Still a little bit misbehaving and curling on the sides, but at least now it looks like it will fit me. And it's going to be a lot more of a pleasant experience to sew all these sides together now that they're not, like, you know, somewhere in the middle. And also my curved hem now looks like a curved hem and not like a rolled hem. If you weren't already convinced that blocking is magic, I hope you are now. Or maybe I shouldn't say that blocking is magic, because then the physicists will think that knitters don't understand knitting. Blocking is science. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? So as promised, reveal shots on a historic place. Even though that promise was more a promise to myself than to you, I still did it. I went to the historic place with my historic inspired sweater. I'm not used to having boat neck sweaters, so I might be adjusting it a lot. Also because there is a little pucker over here, I don't know what I did wrong. Maybe a little extra pressing can get it out. But that is the only deficiency of my sweater thus far. I mean, thus far is... shouldn't have added thus far to that sentence. It's the only fault, mistake. For the rest, this is an absolutely lovely sweater. I do feel pretty regal. Even though, as I said, while I just finished one of the sleeves, I kind of imagined the bell sleeves to be a little bit more dramatic than they are right now. It's okay, like, these are useful sleeves. I can live my daily life with these sleeves. They are not cumbersome, they will not get in the way, so they are, in fact, a very good size. However, you know, for dramatics, I would have loved a little bit of more bell-shaped bell sleeve. Another thing about the sleeves is that I did, of course, some modifications on the pattern, and I made them shorter, just so that they would be even more manageable in daily life. I made them 5 centimeters shorter than the pattern said, and for now they just come like at watch height, which is exactly what I envisioned. The model had the sleeves going over her hands, and that is not something I particularly enjoy, so I went with 5 centimeters shorter sleeves just to not have it touch my hands. And now they are at a very nice length, I think. Yeah, I really need to do something about that puckering because it's really bothering me. I also am not really used to having this long a sweater. Mostly I will make my sweaters rather cropped or just at a length that I can tuck them into my skirt and not wear them on top. So that will be something I will have to get used to, like, you know, visually and style-wise. But on the other hand, it does accentuate that I have an hourglass figure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I will have to get used to it, but it's kind of flattering indeed. And thank you for making it to the end of the video, because I realized I was very snarky about a lot of things, and maybe that's not your vibe. Anyway, I think I have said all that I have to say about this project. I will wear it indefinitely from now on. Yep. If you like these kind of fiber shenanigans, then maybe you could like, comment or subscribe. But of course, that is all up to you. And as for me, I will see you in a next video. But before we do that, here are some more knitting shenanigans. Bye!